Hey guys, welcome back to Webmd&dm, where I talk about the tall tales that happen around my table while playing both games, the Dungeons and the Dragons. This is the 7th session of the Northern Defenders campaign diaries. When last we left our heroes, the party had been hired by Kizuna Motorai of the local Pelor Temple to investigate the disappearance of his friend Randall Marstag, a human druid who spent a lot of time beyond the mountains in the area known as the Northern Wastes. High Father Motorai had informed the party that the best people to talk to about this disappearance would be the members of the Daylor barbarian tribe in the north, as Randall Marstag had been quite friendly with them for a time. Having traveled up into the Northern Wastes, past the Sunset Mountains, they were able to eventually find the Daylor tribe of barbarians and communicate with them. The barbarians had informed the party that they did know roughly where Randall Marstag had gone off to. However, information is power in this area, and thus they did not give away the information for free. If the party wanted to know where Randall Marstag had gone, then the party was going to need to do a favor for the barbarian tribe. After a brief discussion with the Chief Highclimber, he reveals that the Daylor tribe is under threat from multiple factions in the north. These factions range from rival barbarian tribes all the way up to some sort of strange horned beast, and all the way down to a patch of goblins. Chief Highclimber asks the party to go to the nearby goblin war camp, bring back the chief's head, and then he will give them the information that they ask for, as well as a position amongst the tribe if they so desire. After that discussion, the party had then headed to bed. And that's where we pick up today's session. As the party awakens, they find their two barbarian guides waiting for them to guide them to the goblin war camp. The party goes about its traditional morning ritual. The monk meditates to get his key points back. The cleric prepares her spells. The barbarian and the rogue and the ranger gather up their supplies, make sure everything's all set for the adventure. And then they set off to go find the goblin war camp. The barbarian guides inform the party that it would normally take them about half a day's hike to find the goblin war camp. However, recently the forest has become more dangerous, and so they have to spend more time avoiding the natural hazards like the Whitewater River, as well as the more supernatural threats that have started cropping up. The party finds this interesting. What kind of threats are cropping up that would scare a barbarian tribe? The guides don't say anything specific, merely informing them that wolves have been stalking in places they wouldn't normally go, and webs have been appearing in areas where they shouldn't be. However, the party is able to avoid any random encounters due to their dice rolls, and the journey towards the goblin war camp is uneventful. As they emerge from within the depths of the forest, about half a mile away from the goblin war camp, they can see that this goblin war camp is actually more of a dilapidated human settlement that the goblins have taken over. They can see that there's a wooden palisade wall that seems to be crumbling in areas but also being reinforced in others, as well as a stone keep that sits atop a hill in the center of this village. The party stop about half a mile outside of the goblin war camp, close enough that they can see it and see what's going on, but far enough away that they're not likely to raise any suspicions as they set up a small camp and prepare a meal. Finishing the meal, the barbarian guides turn and head back towards the barbarian tribe, letting our heroes know that they can simply follow the trail that they took to get to the goblin war camp to find their way back when the job is done. The party begin to negotiate with each other, trying to decide whether it would be better to attack now in the middle of high noon when they are immediately on the war camp, or to wait until nightfall when the goblins may be less prepared for an assault. Eventually, it boils down to the idea of dark vision versus not dark vision. Since most of the party has dark vision, they decide that it would be best to wait until nightfall to attack when they can see in the dark and the goblins might not be able to. The party had tried to determine whether or not the goblins have dark vision, but nobody succeeded on their nature roll except one person, and that person decided not to share the information with the rest of the party for some reason. Having eventually settled on the plan to assault during the night, they wait until the night begins to fall. As dusk begins to settle and the twilight sets in and darkness begins to consume the northern wastes, they can see these large bonfires being set up within the village. The party are able to determine that there are quite a few bonfires inside that village, and they are able to infer from that knowledge that there are quite a few goblins inside that village. They realize that stealth would probably be the better part of valor in this instance. They decide to sort of stagger out the group line, so that way the stealthier characters can get close to the front lines, while the less stealthy characters stay in the back. So, the marching order is as follows. Leah and Asuna will be at the front of the line. They are the most stealthy characters, Leah being the ranger and Asuna being a rogue. They will be the first responders. They will be right up on the front lines. Following behind them will be Elris, around 90 feet back. As he is a monk, he has the ability to dash and is able to move very quickly to get up to the front lines. And about 60 feet back from Elris are Gurak and Asami. Now, Gurak's dexterity is not particularly great, and Asami has disadvantage due to her heavy armor. So those two will stay far back in the hopes of not ruining the stealth of the frontline characters. And thus, the party begins its excursion into the goblin war camp. Leah and Asuna move up to the heavy wooden gate. They can see that it is actually somewhat well maintained. Somebody's been taking care of it, even though the rest of this village seems to have been abandoned many years ago. However, that well-maintained gate does very little for defense, since there are large openings in the wall where something broke through. Moving to the wall on the left-hand side, they are able to peer into what is essentially a ruined village. They can see these small wooden structures, some of them collapsed in almost every single way except for maybe one standing wall. They can see foundation where a building used to be, but now something has been scavenged off of it, so that all that's left is the mark. They can see a very large building over on the right, a 2-story building by the looks of it, whose second story has mostly caved in and the roof has collapsed. They're not quite certain what it is, but they'll find out later. They also notice what, by first appearance, seems to be a large barn. Actually well maintained. It's still intact. The roof still stands. It doesn't seem to be overgrown and collapsed like most of the buildings that they've seen at first light. And then they notice the other major thing in this area. They notice a torchlight flickering closer to them. As they get closer and closer, they realize there are 3 goblins walking towards them. Right around the time Leah and Asuna realize that these goblins are heading towards them, the torchlight is able to reveal those 2 heroes to the goblins, because one of them rolled really hot on his perception check. He taps his companions, points to the heroes, and lets out a cry. And then it was time for me to utter those 6 words that all DMs have to utter at least once or twice in a session. I need everyone to roll initiative. First, one of the goblins pulls his scimitar and rushes forward to try and cut the heroes off. Then Gurak, hearing the goblins cry, but way in the back, immediately rushes forward as fast as he can to try and get up to the battle. Then Asuna pulls her short swords and jumps into the goblin war camp, hoping to intercept this goblin that's rushing them and kill it before it can do anything fancy. Leah knocks an arrow, lines up a shot, and shoots, but unfortunately misses. Elris uses his Step of the Wind ability to pretty much teleport up onto the battlefield. However, it's his whole turn to get onto the map, so he'll have to wait until next turn to do anything. Next, the 2 remaining goblins. One of them, torch in hand, pulls his scimitar and also rushes forward, reaching Asuna and hitting her with the short sword. However, the 3rd goblin does something a little weird. He doesn't pull a weapon, he doesn't line up a shot with a short bow or anything like that. He heads over to the barn, and he starts working on the door. And at the bottom of the initiative count, Asami, with her short dwarven legs, moves as close as she can, but she's not going to be involved in the battle anytime soon. Back up to the top of the round, the 2 goblins work to try and finish off the heroes as quick as they can, but they're outmatched and they know it. Asuna, Elris, and Leah are able to put one of the goblins down rather quickly using the unarmed strike of the monk, the ranger's bow, and Asuna's sneak attack damage. Gurak rushes forward. He is able to get on the map at this point, but he's still unable to do anything this turn. The 3rd goblin opens the barn. And out of the barn, 2 wargs emerge. Teeth snarling, ready to tear into something. It seems like the goblins were using the barn as a sort of stables to house their not well-tamed mounts. And the wargs are hungry. They bound forward right towards the heroes and are able to wound Asuna rather easily. She's not particularly hard to hit, unfortunately. Our heroes, though having a new threat to face, are still relatively capable, however, and are able to put the wargs down without too much difficulty. However, the goblin who opened the barn is able to escape easily. As soon as he released those wargs, he was out. The party congratulate themselves on having finished this goblin patrol as well as felled these horrible beasts. And they start thinking about what are they going to do next. Eventually, the party decide to search all the nearby buildings, making sure that there aren't any unseen threats nearby, and then they will hole up in the barn for a long rest. As some of the party had been wounded and used some of their abilities, they decide that now would be a good time for a long rest in the barn before continuing their excursion. Gurak spends his time skinning the wargs. He's had some experience and he knows that direwolf pelt can be quite valuable back in town, so he thinks that the warg pelt, while not as nice, might still be worth something to the right person. Elris and Asuna spend their time checking out all of the burnt out husks of buildings in the surrounding area, and they don't discover anything of particular interest. Leah heads over to the large 2-story building that they hadn't quite been able to determine what it was. As she approaches, she can see that there's a sign hanging over the door. Looking at the sign, it's an image of a flagon of ale foaming over the top. She starts thinking, that's kind of familiar. She opens up the door and she can see that there are upturned tables knocked over, benches, chairs, and what looks like a bar in the back. And she realizes, oh, this is a tavern. She heads behind the bar, and she starts looking for a bottle of whiskey. Due to a rather high investigation check, she was actually able to discover a bottle of whiskey. I warned her it wasn't going to taste very good, seeing as it had been stuck in this dilapidated building for many years, but, you know, in a crisis. Having successfully investigated the surrounding area and made sure that there weren't any immediate threats, the party then heads into the barn, closes the barn doors behind them, climbs up onto the second floor, lays out their bedrolls, and prepares to go to bed. However, like any good adventuring company, they take their watches during the rest in the enemy encampment such as this. First up will be Leah, followed by Asuna, and then Elris. They all roll for random encounters, and no random encounters happen. However, their night does not go uninterrupted. Leah takes first watch. Her watch goes uninterrupted except for one interesting moment. She swears she can hear feet walking outside, crunching in the dirt of the road. She suspects it's probably a goblin patrol swinging through the area, making sure that the gate is alright. She starts to get a little concerned as it seems to stick around a little longer than it should. But then it moves on, and everything's fine. Okay. She wakes up Asuna. She informs Asuna that a goblin patrol seemed to have come by, but it continued on without seeming to discover them. Asuna takes her watch. Nothing untoward happens for the first hour, but then she starts to smell something. It smells like smoke? She looks around. She doesn't see any fire. She places her hand on the side of the building. She can feel heat emanating from the wood. And then it clicks. The barn's on fire. The party is on the second floor, so they are not in immediate danger of the flames. However, they are still inside of a burning building, so their first instinct is to kick open the hay bale door that's right next to them and jump out through that way into the ground below and escape the building. It's not too difficult to kick the hay bale door out. It's a little stuck, but they do have a strong barbarian with them. As the door swings open, a few of them poke their heads out to look around, and they can see that yes, indeed, in fact, one of the corners of the barn is being engulfed in flames. They also see that there are 3 goblins. 2 of them are riding wolves, and one of them is riding this mean, nasty-looking dire wolf. And on top of that dire wolf, they can see a goblin who has his arm in a sling from an arrow, and he seems to glare at our heroes with an intense hatred, far beyond what they've seen in any other goblin. As the heroes lock eyes with these goblins, the goblins lock eyes with the heroes, pull back the bows that they'd had ready, and let loose a volley. Luckily, the heroes are able to duck back inside the barn before the arrows hit them. So, our heroes are now trapped inside of a burning barn with a pack of goblins on top of wolves waiting for them to come out. And I think this is a great spot to end today's session. So, if you want to see if our heroes are able to escape the burning barn and how, you're going to have to tune in to the next session. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the blah blah down below, what did you think of me setting the barn on fire? What did you think of the party's decision to wait until nightfall to assault? What did you think of their decision to let the goblin escape without making any sort of attempt to leave? Were you able to connect the dots that the reason the goblin patrol ambushed the heroes inside the barn was because the goblin escaped? Because I don't know if the heroes were able to determine that. I'm happy to answer those questions and more in the blah blah down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to roll your charisma saving throw against the subscribe button. I hope you all have a lovely day, and until I see you next time, Take care.